Welcome back to The Perspective. I'm with Christopher Briggs, who formerly spent a lot of time in Iraq and watched the emergence of the Islamic State before it entered the national and international media spotlight. Chris, you spoke about the forerunners of the Islamic State taking over security control in northern cities and then that being pushed back. How exactly did that evolve? When they had control, did they have it to the extent that the Islamic State now has it now?
Well, when you had the presence of the US military, you could almost, to simplify what is a complicated situation, or what was a complicated situation, up to kind of 2009, from 2003 to 2009, you had the presence of the US coalition military in Mosul. They would work with the newly trained Iraqi military. So, for example, you might have joint teams on the ground which should consist of, say, 60 Iraqi soldiers backed up by 30 US soldiers, then with air support hovering overhead, quick reaction units ready to come in and support. So there was a military and security presence on the streets of Mosul from 2003 to 2009, which was either coalition, joint coalition Iraqi, or Iraqis with support from the coalition. Now that, by day if you like, controlled the main thoroughfares through the city. So on the main highways through the city, you might have, in an average day in 2007, you might have up to a dozen IEDs, bombs, going off in the street. But aside from that, there would be reaction to those bombs, there would be sealing of the areas, there would be some control of the traffic and some semblance of control. Outside those areas, particularly in the poorer neighbourhoods, Islamic State of control, if not by day, if not overtly, because they did not want to take those risks in case there was a drone overhead that could identify them, if not overtly, they certainly were covertly running those neighbourhoods, both from a security perspective and a social control perspective. What was preached in mosques, what was taught in schools, and how businesses operated, tax they'd have to pay, where people, licenses effectively for businesses. So that in some ways is very similar to the control of which they're exercising now, except now they're doing it with virtual impunity. Okay, there is a threat of targeted airstrikes, but that is by no means as clear and present threat as a infantry unit coming in the ground and clearing in a neighbourhood, which is what had happened if they tried to do it overtly in the period when the US coalition military were there.
So how do they exercise control in the areas they control?
I think power stems from the barrel of a gun in Mosul, and certainly they have units that patrol the streets, go on sweeping through businesses, so they'll have a schedule of visits to different businesses. Businesses will be expected to pay tax for protection. They then have departments that look after education, for example. That department will check schools, will ensure that girls are only being taught by female teachers, boys are only being taught by male teachers, that the curriculum and the textbooks being used are in line with their interpretation of Islam, like a education enforcement department, but always backed up by this fear of the gun. Justice, where they see that people are stepping outside the bounds, justice is administered arbitrarily. They would take people out in the street and shoot them as a spectacle to the neighbourhood that if you don't comply with the very letter of their directives, that they will take action. So effectively they exercise control through fear. I don't think there's a lot of social capital behind them. By social capital I mean goodwill, people supporting their ideology, people believing that they'll deliver a better future. I certainly don't sense that, and I've never sensed that from any of Muslims, Christians, Kurdish Yazidis, or any of the other groups I've spoken to from within Mosul. Everyone's in fear of these people.
They formed out of earlier groups, but did they coalesce, or was there always a clear leadership that brought them to the stage they're at now?
I'm not an expert analyst in the sort of internal workings of a group. My understanding is that around the kind of 04-05 period, there was a distinct shift from being led by outside jihadists, e.g. Al-Qaeda guys who'd been posted in from the Afghan camps, people like Ayman al-Zakuri, who was killed in an airstrike. After that, there was a movement towards Iraqi leadership.
Back in just a moment on The Perspective.